Los Angeles International Airport was a chaotic mess of rolling suitcases, hurrying passengers, and overhead announcements echoing in every direction. Isabella clutched her phone tightly, scanning the crowd for any sign of her brother. Jacob. He was supposed to land 20 minutes ago. She stretched up on her tiptoes. But LAX was always a sea of tall people and taller problems. Her heart thudded with a mixture of excitement and frustration. Jacob had been away for months, and she couldn't wait to give him a proper welcome. Home hug. Then, out of the corner of her eye, she spotted him more, at least she thought she did. Broad shoulders, dark hair, that same confident stance. That's him. Without thinking twice, Isabella pushed through the crowd. She weaved past families reuniting and travelers hauling over stuffed luggage. Her pulse quickened as she closed the distance. When she reached him, she didn't hesitate. She threw her arms around him, burying her face against his chest. "Oh my God, Jacob, I missed you so much." But something was ... off. The chest she was hugging was firm. Way too firm. And the scent wasn't Jacob's usual mix of shampoo and fast food. Instead, it was a sophisticated woody cologne, something expensive, sharp, almost magnetic. Her heart skipped slowly. Isabella lifted her head. The man staring down at her wasn't Jacob. His suit was perfectly tailored, emphasizing his lean build. His dark hair was meticulously styled and his jawline looked like it had been carved by a sculptor. But it was his eyes stormed gray and piercing that locked onto hers with a mixture of confusion and amusement. Isabella gasped and stumbled.
Back so quickly.
She almost knocked over a rolling suitcase. "Oh no, I'm so sorry. I thought you were my brother." The man didn't move. He raised a brow, a slow, curious smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. Well, that was unexpected. Isabella felt her face flush a deep red. It was the reflection in the glass. I wasn't paying attention. My emotional nearsightedness kicked in. He chuckled softly. Emotional nearsightedness? When your emotions make you see what you want to see instead of what's actually in front of you? She was rambling. Oh God, shut up, Isabella, before he could respond, a massive man in a dark suit appeared beside him, looking like he belonged in a Secret Service movie. "Mr. Daniel, is everything all right? Mr. Daniel?" Isabella's stomach dropped. Daniel, as in Daniel Blackstone? The reclusive billionaire known for avoiding the spotlight. This was bad. Really bad. Daniel looked at her with that same amused, almost gentle expression. "Are you afraid of billionaires?"
Oh.
"I'm afraid of ending up in a viral video titled, 'Random Girl Hugs Millionaire by Mistake.'" Daniel's smile widened. Too late for that. Isabella felt the ground slip beneath her feet. She had hugged the wrong man. Correction. She had hugged the man, and there was no undoing it now. And she had no idea that this single, awkward mistake would change the course of her entire life. 2 days had passed since the hug incident, as Isabella now called it in her head. She had spent most of that time replaying the scene at LAX over and over again, its time cringing a little harder. Hugging a random stranger was bad enough. Hugging Daniel Blackstone, one of the wealthiest, most private men in Los Angeles. That was another level of awkward entirely. Still, life had to go on. Bills didn't pay themselves, and Jacob's upcoming medical appointments weren't going to be cheap. So Isabella tied her apron around her waist, pulled her hair back, and stepped behind the counter at Jet Brew Cafe, the busy little coffee shop nestled just outside the main terminals at LAX. The morning rush had already started. Businessmen barked orders into phones while demanding lattes. Sleep-deprived travelers clutched at any caffeine they could get their hands on. Isabella had just finished fixing a complicated mocha when Mr. Daniels, her manager, waved her over. "Special order for table 12, he said, adjusting his tie in that fussy way he always did. "Take it yourself." Isabella grabbed the tray and wove through the crowd with the practiced grace of someone used to navigating chaos. As she approached table 12, she opened her mouth to greet the customer, then froze. Daniel Blackstone, sitting casually at the table, like he didn't own half the buildings in downtown LA, including probably this very cafe. It's dark gray. eyes locked onto her, a slow grin spreading across his face. "We meet again," he said, sounding far too pleased with himself. Isabella almost dropped the tray. "You, yes, me." She quickly placed the coffee cup in front of him, hoping he'd take the drink, and that would be the end of it. "Here's your order. Have a nice day." She spun on her heel. "Wait, of course." She paused, sighing inwardly. "Yes." Daniel tilted his head, his expression 1 part curiosity, 2 parts amusement. "Do you always run off so quickly?" "Depends. You always sit at cafes hoping random women will serve you coffee?" "Maybe," he admitted with a shrug. "Or maybe it's fate." Isabella folded her arms. "Or maybe it's an airport cafe with limited seating." Daniel chuckled, a rich, warm sound that made her stomach flip against her will. "Fair point." Took a slow sip of his coffee, never breaking eye contact. "Since we've bumped into each other again, can I ask you something? You're going to ask anyway, aren't you?"
Sadly.
Isabella sighed. "Fine. Ask." Daniel leaned forward. "Did you really mistake me for your brother? Or were you just in the mood to hug a random stranger at the airport?" Her jaw dropped. "What? Of course, it was a mistake." His eyes sparkled with mischief. "Just checking." Before she could fire back, Mr. Daniels called her name from across the cafe. Isabella gave Daniel a sharp look and turned away. But as she returned to the counter, she could still feel his gaze following her. It wasn't a coincidence he was here, and something told her it wouldn't be the last time he showed up. Either, the first thing Isabella noticed the next morning wasn't the usual clattering of coffee cups or the hum of early travelers. It was Daniel already seated at his now usual table 12. A black coffee in front of him, untouched. She rolled her eyes, tying her apron a little tighter. "Of course," she muttered. "Persistent billionaire strikes again." By now, her co-workers had started noticing. Whispers followed her from the back room to the counter. Some of them speculated that Daniel was scouting the cafe for investment. Others claimed he was secretly writing a book and needed real-world inspiration. But Isabella knew the truth, or at least, she thought she did. Daniel was bored, rich, good-looking, and clearly used to getting what he wanted. She was probably just the latest novelty in his otherwise scripted life. Table 12. Mr. Daniels reminded her with a pointed look. She grabbed the tray and headed over. "You're going to get sick of this place," she said as she set down his coffee. "If you haven't already." "I like the coffee," Daniel replied smoothly. "And the company." Isabella flushed and tried not to smile. "I'm working." Clearly, his gaze softened. "But you look tired." She shrugged. "That's what happens when you work double shifts and stress about medical bills." Daniel frowned slightly. "Is it your brother?" She froze, not expecting him to remember. "Jacob, yes. His treatments aren't cheap." She hesitated, then forced a smile. "But it's nothing I can't handle." Daniel leaned back, studying her. "What kind of treatment does he need?" Her defenses shot up. "Why?" "Because. Maybe I can help." "No." The response was immediate, sharp. "Not looking for charity. I didn't say charity." His voice was calm, steady. "A deal. I like deals." Isabella folded her arms. "What kind of deal?" "Consider it a contract for peace of mind. I help cover Jacob's treatments. In return, you stop worrying and focus on taking care of yourself and your brother." She blinked. "That's not a deal." "That's still charity in a nicer suit." Daniel chuckled. "Fine, how about this? You cook for me. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. For a week. Fair pay for fair work." "Cook?" Isabella frowned. "Why would you want me to cook? I've eaten enough overpriced, soulless restaurant meals to last a lifetime." Besides, he added with a sly smile, "You mentioned once that you're a great cook." "Had a long time ago, before her parents' restaurant closed and her life became a never-ending financial scramble." "This is ridiculous." She muttered. "Maybe," Daniel agreed, "but it's my offer, and I don't give up easily." She stared at him, heart pounding. Everything inside her screamed to say no, to maintain distance, to protect herself. But Jacob needed her. And deep down she knew this wasn't about pity. Was Daniel strange? Infuriating, oddly sweet way of saying he cared. Fine, she said finally. But just 1 week. Daniel smiled like he had just closed the best deal of his career. 1 week. Neither of them realized it wouldn't be nearly enough. Cooking for Daniel had become surprisingly, not that Isabella had meant for it to, she told herself, every single morning, that this was just a temporary arrangement. A deal. A way to pay for Jacob's treatments without feeling like she owed anyone. And yet, each time she stepped into Daniel's apartment, the breathtaking penthouse overlooking Los Angeles, things got just a little more complicated. Daniel wasn't the cold, calculating billionaire she'd imagined. He was frustrating, sure, and infuriatingly good at getting his way. But he also listened when she talked. He remembered little things like how she liked her coffee or that she couldn't stand cilantro. It was confusing. Dangerous even, because she was starting to trust him. But everything unraveled that Thursday afternoon. She was wiping down the kitchen counter, prepping ingredients for dinner, when her phone buzzed. A text from Jacob. Did you know Blackstone Holdings bought out a bunch of family restaurants a few years ago, including Harbor Bistro? Isabella froze. Harbor Bistro, her family's restaurant. The place where she'd learned to cook, where her parents had poured their lives into every table, every meal. The restaurant that had been forced to close when the lease tripled overnight. Her breath caught. Surely Jacob was mistaken. She quickly searched the name. Article after article popped up. Real estate expansions, corporate acquisitions. And then Blackstone Holdings finalizes purchase of Midtown properties, resulting in redevelopment of multiple local restaurants, including Harbor Bistro. Her stomach dropped. Daniel's company. Her heartbeat pounded in her ears as she scrolled. Further, it wasn't just a hostile takeover. It was the reason her family had lost everything. And all this time, Daniel had said nothing. The front door opened behind her. Daniel's familiar voice drifted in, casual and warm. Hey, thought I'd pick up some wine for dinner. Hope you don't mind, Reds. Isabella turned slowly, the phone still in her hand. Did you know? Daniel paused, sensing the shift in her tone immediately. Did I know what? 8. That your company, Blackstone Holdings, was responsible for shutting down Harbor Bistro? Her voice was steady, but her hand shook. My family's restaurant. Daniel's face paled. Isabella, I don't. She held up a hand. Did you know? There was a long, painful pause. Not until recently, he admitted quietly. And I should have told you. I was trying to find a way to fix it. Isabella felt like the floor had disappeared beneath her feet, so it's true. Daniel stepped forward. Please, let me explain, but she backed away. It was all a game, wasn't it? The coffee, the dinners, hiring me to cook. You felt guilty? That's all this was? His expression shattered. No, it was never that. But Isabella didn't stay to hear the rest. She grabbed her coat, pushed past him, and fled the apartment. For the first time since the day they met. She wasn't sure she'd ever come back. For days, Isabella avoided Daniel. No calls, no texts, no accidental coffee deliveries or convenient meetings. She blocked out every reminder of him, focusing instead on Jacob and work. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't block out the truth that Daniel had known. That the man who had become such a huge part of her life was tied to the single event that had shattered her family's dreams. And yet, what haunted her just as much was the look on Daniel's face when she'd walked out. Not anger, not defensiveness, just ... regret. She tried to convince herself it didn't matter. She had to protect herself. She couldn't fall for someone who had caused so much damage, even unintentionally. But then, on a rainy Tuesday evening, everything changed. She was closing the cafe when Mr. Daniels came to the counter. Someone dropped this off for you. He handed her a large envelope. No return address. It's just her name, written in Daniel's careful, familiar handwriting. Her first instinct was to toss it. Pretend she never saw it. But curiosity and a quiet part of her heart that hadn't given up got the better of her. She opened it. Inside was a contract and a deed. She stared at it, unable to breathe. This certifies that Harbor Bistro located at 14 Seaside Avenue, Santa Monica Pier, is hereby transferred to Isabella Thompson as sole owner. Her fingers trembled. Attached was a note written in Daniel's unmistakable script. I can't erase the past, but I can give back what should have always been yours. No strings, no expectations. It's just the truth and a second chance. If you want it? Daniel * Isabella sank into a chair, the weight of it all pressing down on her. He had bought the restaurant back, not to impress her, not to manipulate her, just to make things right. For a long time, she sat staring at the papers. Part of her wanted to scream, to cry, to question what this meant, but deep down, she already knew. That night, after locking up the cafe, she found herself walking toward Daniel's building. Her heart raced with every step. The doorman didn't even blink. He's been waiting. Ma'am, of course he had. When she knocked, the door opened almost instantly. Daniel stood there, looking nothing like the confident, composed billionaire she'd first met. His eyes were tired, his posture tense. I wasn't sure you'd... Come, he said softly. Isabella didn't speak. She stepped forward, and without a word, wrapped her arms around him. Daniel froze, then slowly, carefully returned the hug. I meant it. No strings. I know, Isabella whispered against his chest. But this isn't about the restaurant. Anymore? Daniel leaned back, searching her eyes. Then what is it about? She smiled through tears. It's about trust. And I'm ready to give you another chance. And for the first time, the past no longer felt like a burden. It felt like a bridge. One they could cross together. The day Isabella reopened Harbor Bistro dawned bright and cool, with the salty breeze from Santa Monica Pier drifting in through the freshly cleaned windows. For the first time in years, the restaurant felt alive again. Gone were the dusty tablecloths and peeling paint. Now, warm lights spilled across newly polished wood floors, and the air smelled like fresh bread and hope. Isabella stood in the center of it all. Wearing an apron over a simple dress, her hands pressed against her hips as she surveyed the dining room around her. The soft hum of voices and the clinking of silverware filled the space. It wasn't full yet, but it would be. Behind her, Jacob moved carefully, still recovering, but determined to help. Looks like you did it, Bella. She smiled at her brother. We did it. But it wasn't just Jacob and her. It was Daniel, too. He stepped out from the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, looking like the least likely sous chef in Los Angeles. His expensive watch was the only clue to who he really was. You approve? He asked, gesturing around the restaurant. Isabella nodded, her chest tightening. It's perfect. The journey hadn't been easy. After she accepted the deed and told Daniel she was ready to try again, they spent months working side by side, not just rebuilding Harbor Bistro, but rebuilding trust. There were late nights covered in paint, arguments about menus and budgets, moments where the past tried to pull them apart. But every time Daniel stayed, he wasn't just writing checks. He was sanding tables, reviewing supplier lists, and taste-testing recipes with the seriousness of a man negotiating million-dollar deals. One night, while they were installing new light fixtures, Daniel paused and looked at her with that steady, storm gray gaze. I never thought I'd fall in love because of a wrong hug at an airport. Isabella laughed softly. Neither did I. Now standing together in the restaurant they'd saved. It all felt worth it as the evening crowd began to filter in. Isabella heard the familiar voice of Mr. Daniels, her former cafe manager, among the guests. She shot Daniel a mischievous look. Imagine telling him his barista is now the owner of this place and married to a billionaire. Daniel chuckled, pulling her close. Let's not. Let's just enjoy tonight. A few hours later, after the last table was cleared and the staff had gone home, Isabella and Daniel lingered in the quiet dining room. Ready for tomorrow? He asked. She smiled, leaning into him. I'm ready for forever. Daniel pulled a small box from his pocket, opening it to reveal a simple, elegant ring. Then, let's make it official. Isabella gasped. I thought we already were. We are. But I figured Harbor Bistro deserved to witness this too. With a soft laugh, she nodded. Yes. As Daniel slipped the ring onto her finger, Isabella realized that their story wasn't about a mistake anymore. It was about a second chance. About choosing to stay. About building something real together. And as they stood beneath the soft glow of the bistro's new lights, she knew she was exactly where she was meant to be. The ballroom at the Beverly Hills Hotel sparkled with soft golden light, crystal chandeliers dangling overhead. The annual Children's Hope Gala was in full swing, the clink of champagne glasses. Cameras outside the entrance. Isabella adjusted the simple but elegant navy dress she'd chosen, one that Daniel had insisted was perfect. Even though she had spent an hour fretting over it. "You look nervous," Daniel whispered. "It's mine, unfortunately, but I'm glad you're here." As they made their way toward their table, Isabella caught the subtle glances cast their way, the polite smiles, the quiet whispers. People noticed Daniel wherever he went. Tonight was no exception. But then, out of the sea of unfamiliar faces, one very familiar one appeared. Evelyn, tall, blonde, dressed in a silver gown that shimmered like ice. She moved toward them with the grace of someone who had always known how to command a room. "Daniel," Evelyn purred, her smile tight. "What a surprise." Her gaze slid to Isabella, eyes cool and assessing. "And this must be the infamous Isabella." Daniel stiffened beside her. "Evelyn, I didn't realize you'd be attending." "I never miss this gala," Evelyn replied smoothly. "And clearly, neither do you. Though your choice of company has changed." Isabella felt. Heat rushed to her cheeks, but she forced a calm expression. "Nice to meet you." Evelyn's smile didn't reach her eyes. "I've read all about you." Daniel took a subtle but firm step between the two women. "I just hope you know what you're doing, Daniel. People talk, mistakes. At your level, come with a heavy price." Before Isabella could respond, Daniel's voice dropped, quiet but commanding. "I don't make mistakes when it comes to the people I care about." Evelyn's jaw tightened. "We'll see." She turned and glided back into the crowd, leaving a chill in her wake. Isabella let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. That was ... intense. Daniel wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "Ignore her. She's used to being the center of attention. Tonight, she wasn't." Isabella leaned into him. "Do I need to be worried?" "No," Daniel said firmly. "She's the past. You're my future." Despite the drama, the rest of the evening passed more easily. Guests praised the couple's generosity when Daniel announced a significant donation to the hospital that had saved Jacob's life. And as the event wound down, Daniel pulled Isabella onto the dance floor for a slow, steady waltz. "You handled that better than I did," he whispered with a smile. "I've had plenty of practice dealing with difficult customers," Isabella teased. They shared a quiet laugh. Swaying beneath the chandelier's soft glow, Evelyn might have tried to shake their foundation, but as Isabella rested her head against Daniel's chest, she knew their bond was stronger than ever. The morning after the gala, Isabella woke to the sound of her phone vibrating relentlessly on the nightstand. At first, she thought it was just a group text from her coworkers or maybe Jacob checking in. But as soon as she unlocked the screen, her heart sank. Isabella Thompson. From barista to billionaire's girlfriend. What's her game? Social climber or Cinderella? Inside the scandalous rise of Daniel Blackstone's new flame, her social media feeds were flooded with photos from the gala. Some flattering, most weren't. And the comments, they were worse. "She's obviously using him. Gold digger. Typical. How long until he moves on, like he always does." Isabella shut off the phone, her stomach twisting into knots. She didn't even realize she was holding her breath until Jacob appeared in the doorway. "You okay?" he asked gently. She forced a smile. "I'm fine. You don't look fine. I just need coffee." But coffee didn't fix the feeling that had settled deep in her chest, the crushing weight of not belonging. She thought she'd prepared herself for this. She knew dating someone like Daniel meant people would talk. She knew there'd be whispers, speculations, even outright lies. What she hadn't expected was how much it would hurt. Later that afternoon, she met Daniel at Harbor Bistro. He'd been there all morning, going over supplier lists and menu designs. When he looked up and saw her, his entire face lit up, but she couldn't bring herself to smile back. "Hey," he greeted, setting down a stack of papers. "I was thinking about offering a tasting menu for the opening week, Daniel," she interrupted softly. "We need to talk." The light in his eyes dimmed instantly. "What's wrong?" She hesitated, searching for the right words. "I don't think I can do this." "Do what?" "This?" She gestured between them. "Your world, the cameras, the headlines, the constant judgment. I feel like I'm drowning, and no matter how hard I try to swim, I'm still sinking." Daniel stood slowly, closing the distance between them. "Isabella, you knew this wouldn't be easy, but we're in this together. I thought I could handle it. But I'm not like Evelyn or any of those other women. I'm not polished. I'm not powerful. I'm just ... me. That's exactly why I fell for you." His voice was firm, but gentle. "I don't want someone polished or powerful. I want you." She shook her head. "Sometimes love isn't enough." Daniel's eyes darkened. "It is if we fight for it." Isabella wanted to believe him. She really did. But every headline, every whisper, every sideways glance told her otherwise. "I just need some time," she whispered. Daniel's shoulders tensed, but he nodded. "Take whatever time you need. But I'm not going anywhere." As she walked out of Harbor Bistro, the weight in her chest grew heavier. She wasn't sure if she was running away from Daniel, from the fear that she'd never truly belong by his side. For a while, Isabella hoped the noise would fade, that the tabloids would move on, that the social media trolls would find a new target. But hope, she was learning, was a dangerous thing. Instead of dying down, the rumors only grew louder. Every time she opened her phone or stepped outside, it felt like the world was watching her, waiting for her to slip. Photos from the gala circulated endlessly. Headlines speculated about when Daniel would come to his senses. Anonymous accounts spread lies about her past, about Harbor Bistro, about Jacob, about things that weren't even remotely true. The worst part? People she didn't even know treated her like a villain in a story they didn't bother to understand. One afternoon, she stopped by the grocery store near the bistro. As she stood in line, two women behind her whispered just loud enough to be heard. "That's her. It's the one. Dating Blackstone. Seriously. She doesn't even look like she belongs at those events. Probably won't last long. They never do." Isabella stared straight ahead, pretending not to hear, but her hands shook as she gripped the cart. Back at the restaurant, things weren't much better. Staff members who used to chat easily with her now kept their distance. Some of them avoided eye contact altogether. Even her vendors hesitated when discussing orders, as if waiting for the inevitable announcement that Daniel had moved and Harbor Bistro would be abandoned once again. By the time she returned home that evening, the weight of it all was suffocating. Jacob was waiting on the couch, a concerned look in his eyes. "Bella, you've got to stop reading the headlines." "I'm not reading them," she lied. Jacob frowned. "That doesn't mean you're not listening to them." She sank onto the couch beside him. "I can't stop them from talking, and the more they talk, the more I feel like they might be right." Jacob's face hardened. "Right? About what? About you using Daniel? About being a gold digger?" "Bella, that's not who you are, but it's who they think I am." Jacob leaned forward, gripping her hands. "Since when do you care what strangers think? You've always been stronger than that." "Maybe I'm not anymore," she whispered. A sharp knock at the door made them both jump. When Isabella opened it, Daniel stood there. His tie was loose, his usually confident expression replaced by something raw and weary. "Can we talk?" he asked softly. She shook her head. "I don't think that's a good idea, Isabella. I know this is hard. But letting them decide who we are? Who you are? That's not the answer." Tears burned at the back of her eyes. "I don't think I can do this anymore." Daniel stepped closer. "Then let me carry the weight. Please." But Isabella took a step back. "I need space." The look in his eyes broke her, and as she closed the door between them, sinking feeling settled deep in her chest. This wasn't just a fight. It felt like the beginning of the end. For days, The silence between Isabella and Daniel stretched like an invisible wall. Isabella went through the motions managing Harbor Bistro, caring for Jacob, pretending the weight of public judgment wasn't crushing her. But every time she turned on the news or scrolled through her phone, the headlines screamed the same lies. Blackstone romance on the rocks. Sources claim Isabella Thompson's Cinderella story may be over. Isabella's real motives exposed, and then came the worst one. Anonymous insiders say she was in it for the money all along. She wanted to scream, to fight back. But every time she tried, the noise got louder. Her small voice drowned beneath the roar of public opinion, until Daniel spoke. On a crisp Friday morning, Isabella's phone buzzed nonstop, text after text. Even Jacob burst into the bistro's kitchen, waving his phone. "Bella, turn on the news now." She grabbed the remote and flipped to the local channel. There he was, Daniel Blackstone, standing in front of a dozen cameras. His usual designer suit crisp and sharp, though his eyes looked tired like he hadn't slept in days. Reporters clamored for attention, shoving microphones forward. "Mr. Blackstone, is it true your relationship with Isabella Thompson is over? Is it all just a publicity stunt? Some say she was only after your fortune." Comments. Daniel raised a hand, silencing them. His voice was calm, but carried an edge of steel. "I usually don't respond to gossip. But when the woman I love is being dragged through the mud by people who've never even met her, I can't stay quiet." The reporters fell silent. Daniel continued, "Isabella Thompson is not a gold digger. She didn't pursue me. In fact, I pursued her repeatedly. She wanted nothing to do with my money or my status. She cared about her family, her business, and working hard to build a life she could be proud of." His eyes hardened. "Anyone questioning her motives doesn't know her. And frankly, they don't know me either. I don't choose my relationships based on public approval or convenience." Hey, pause. Cameras clicked furiously. She didn't want this spotlight. I brought it to her. And if that's made her life difficult, I'm the one to blame. Daniel took a breath. "But I won't apologize for loving her." The last words hit Isabella like a tidal wave. "I love Isabella Thompson," he repeated. Quieter now, but just as firm. "And I will continue to stand by her, whether the media approves or not." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then the feed cut to the anchors, stunned into silence themselves. Isabella's hands shook as she lowered the remote. Jacob just grinned, eyes wide. "Told you he wasn't going to let this slide." She couldn't speak. Her throat felt tight. For the first time since the scandal exploded, it wasn't just her fighting. Daniel had stood up, publicly unapologetic ally, and deep down, she knew this wasn't the end of their story. It was the beginning of a new chapter. The afternoon sun slanted through the front windows of Harbor Bistro, casting long golden beams across the wooden floor. Isabella stood behind the counter, absently wiping down the same spot for the third time. She hadn't spoken to Daniel since his press conference. Not because she was angry, not even because she was unsure. She was scared. Scared that if she opened her heart again, it would only hurt more. Scared that she'd never really fit into his world, no matter how many times he said otherwise. But mostly, she was scared that he might give up. "I love Isabella Thompson." His words from the broadcast still echoed in her mind, not just the words, but how he'd said them. Firm, unapologetic, as if no amount of gossip or judgment could change the truth. The bell above the bistro's door chimed. She glanced up automatically, expecting a customer. It wasn't a customer, it was Daniel. He looked exhausted. His suit jacket was gone, sleeves rolled to his elbows, hair slightly mussed like he'd been running his hands through it all day. But his eyes, those storm gray eyes, were steady, unwavering. "Hey," he said softly. Isabella set down the rag and came around the counter, wiping her damp hands on her apron. "Hey." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The space between them felt heavy with all the unsaid things. Finally, Daniel broke the silence. "I'm not here to pressure you, or to change your mind." She swallowed hard. "Then why are you here?" "Because I meant what I said. All of it. I love you, Isabella. Not the headlines. Not the woman people think you should be. You. She felt her guard begin to crack. It's not just about love, Daniel. It's about everything else. The judgment, the spotlight, the fear that no matter how hard I try, I'll always feel like I don't belong. You do belong, he said quietly. It's not because you fit into some mold. Because we chose each other. And I'll keep choosing you even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Her throat tightened. She thought of Jacob. Of all the people who had stood by her. And then of Daniel, fighting battles she hadn't even known about, taking public blows to protect her. She stepped closer. Close enough to feel the warmth of him. Why didn't you give up? She asked softly. Daniel smiled just a little. Because you're worth it. Isabella took a deep breath. And then, finally, she let the last of her walls fall. She reached up, resting her hand against his cheek. Then maybe it's time I stop running. Daniel covered her hand with his own, his relief palpable. I'd really appreciate that. Before she could overthink it, Isabella leaned in and kissed him. It wasn't dramatic or showy, just honest. Promised that whatever came next, they'd face it together. When they pulled back, Daniel whispered, So...
Ed!
Does this mean you'll let me help with tonight's dinner rush?
Ed!
Isabella laughed. Absolutely not. But when she took his hand, she didn't let go. In the weeks that followed their reconciliation, Isabella and Daniel worked side by side to prepare Harbor Bistro for its grand reopening. It was exhausting. It was chaotic. It was occasionally downright maddening. But it was also perfect. Every morning started the same. Isabella would arrive early, apron in hand, reviewing supply orders and training new staff. Daniel would show up about an hour later, coffee in one hand, a clipboard in the other, sleeves rolled up and ready for whatever challenge the day threw at them, and there were plenty of challenges. The kitchen equipment arrived late. The permits nearly got delayed. During one particularly dramatic afternoon, a supplier accidentally delivered 30 crates of kale instead of tomatoes. Isabella thought she might lose her mind, but every time she started to unravel, Daniel was there, calm, steady. When the kale fiasco happened, just arched an eyebrow and said, "Guess we're running a health food bistro now." She'd burst out laughing, the tension breaking like a popped balloon. The bistro itself was coming together beautifully. It kept the original charm wooden tables, soft lighting, hand-painted signs, but added modern touches. Daniel insisted on installing a small stage for live music, saying it would give the place even more personality. "You're making this feel like home again," Isabella told him one evening. Standing by the window as the sunset bathed the dining room in gold, he slipped his arms around her waist, pressing a kiss to her temple. "No, we're making it home." As the reopening date approached, they worked late into the nights, fueled by takeout meals and too much coffee. Jacob even pitched in, healthier and stronger now, joking that he was the official taste tester. The night before the launch, Isabella sat at one of the newly refinished tables, exhaustion settling deep in her bones. "I still can't believe this is happening," she whispered. Daniel sat across from her, fingers laced with hers. "Believe it, this is just the beginning." She smiled, nerves and excitement swirling together. "You know, you didn't have to stick around for all this chaos." Daniel leaned in, eyes steady. "I wasn't sticking around for the restaurant, Isabella," her breath caught. "I was sticking around for you." The next evening, as the first customers filtered in, Isabella felt like her heart might burst. Regulars. From the old days, curious newcomers, even some local food critics. The bistro buzzed with warmth and laughter, the kind of magic you couldn't fake. Daniel stood beside her, looking every bit the successful businessman he was, but with a softness. In his eyes only she got to see. "This is your dream," he whispered. She squeezed his hand. "No, our dream." As the night unfolded and Harbor Bistro came alive once more, Isabella realized something. They hadn't just rebuilt a restaurant, they'd built a future. Together, the bistro had been open for just over a month, and every evening felt like a small celebration. Isabella watched customers fill the tables she and Daniel had carefully chosen. eating dishes she had once only dreamed of serving again. Jacob managed the reservations like a pro, already earning a reputation for his charm. Even Mr. Daniels, her old cafe boss, had stopped by to compliment the place, though he tried to pretend he wasn't impressed. But tonight felt different. There was a quietness to the evening. Even with the hum of happy voices and the clinking of glasses, something in the air. Daniel had insisted on closing the restaurant for a private dinner after hours. Just the two of them. No fancy clothes, he'd said. Just come as you are. So she had. Simple jeans, a soft blouse, her hair loose. She wasn't sure what he was planning, but after everything they'd been through, she trusted him completely. The dining room was dimly lit, the tables empty except for one. Daniel had set it with soft white candles and a small bouquet of wildflowers, her favorite. As she approached, he pulled out her chair like the perfect gentleman he never pretended to be, but always became when it mattered most. "Wine?" he asked. With a smile, she nodded, heart fluttering. "Sure. But if you cooked, I'm terrified." He chuckled. "Relax." I ordered takeout. They ate in comfortable silence, laughing about the bistro's first month, recalling kitchen disasters and funny customer moments. But as dessert ended warm apple tart, just like her mom used to make, Daniel grew quiet. He stood, took her hand, and pulled her gently to her feet. He began, his voice softer than usual. "When we met, it was by accident. It's a very embarrassing accident," Isabella reminded him. Daniel smiled. "The best mistake I've ever made." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Isabella's breath caught before he even opened it. "Duh, I could have proposed in some fancy ballroom," he said, "or on a yacht, or at a rooftop party full of reporters, but none of that would have felt right. This place, your dream, our dream, this is where everything changed." He opened the box to reveal a simple, elegant diamond ring. Not flashy, showy, just perfect. "Isabella Thompson, will you marry me?" For a heartbeat, she couldn't speak. Memories flashed through her mind. The airport, the wrong hug, the scandal, the rebuilding of the bistro. Every fight and every reconciliation. And the look in Daniel's eyes, now the same look he'd given her the first time he'd said he loved her, held no doubt, no fear, only hope. She blinked back tears. "Yes." Daniel slipped the ring onto her finger and pulled her into his arms, holding her like he never wanted to let go. "Good," he whispered, "because I'm never giving you up." As they stood together in the quiet bistro, Isabella realized this wasn't just the next step. It was the beginning of forever. Planning a wedding was supposed to be fun, or so people said. For Isabella and Daniel, it was turning into a second full-time job. The bistro was thriving, which meant Isabella already spent her days juggling menus, managing staff, and overseeing weekend events. Jacob was helping, but even he couldn't shield her from the endless stream of decisions about vendors, table linens, flowers, and seating charts. Meanwhile, Daniel's business obligations ramped up. Blackstone Holdings was negotiating a new international deal that kept him in and out of meetings from dawn until midnight. They were both exhausted some nights. Isabella would fall asleep at the bistro office desk, only to wake up with Daniel's jacket draped over her shoulders. Never said anything. He just smiled, kissed her forehead, and told her they'd figure it out. But the real storm hit when the media got wind of their wedding date. Suddenly, it wasn't just friends and family offering opinions. Gossip sites speculated about every detail: the dress, the guest list, even whether the wedding would actually happen. Will Daniel Blackstone really walk down the aisle? Sources say cold feet could delay big day. Isabella tried to ignore it. So did Daniel. But the constant scrutiny wore them both down. One evening, after the bistro had closed, Isabella sat at table 3. Her favorite tan stared at the growing stack of wedding catalogs and invoices. "This is insane," she muttered, rubbing her temples. Daniel slid into the seat across from her. His tie was loose, and he looked just as drained. "I had 3 different PR managers suggest we live stream the wedding," she groaned, "over my dead body." He chuckled, but leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "Bella, maybe we're doing this all wrong. She frowned. How so? We wanted this day to be about us, but it's turned into a circus. Everyone has an opinion. Everyone wants a piece of it. She nodded, feeling the pressure in her chest ease just a little. So what do we do? Daniel reached across the table and took her hand. We go back to the beginning, to why we're doing this. Because you chased me around Jet Brew Calf like a stubborn billionaire who wouldn't take no for an answer? His lips curved into a smile. Exactly. For a moment, the tension lifted. Daniel squeezed her hand. Let's keep it simple. Small ceremony. People who actually matter. No press. No chaos. Just us. Isabella exhaled relief washing over her. It sounds perfect. They sat there in the quiet, surrounded by the bistro's familiar warmth. In that moment, Isabella realized something. Challenges would always come. Headlines would always shout. But as long as they faced them together, they could survive anything. The bistro had been rebuilt. Their love had weathered storms. Now, they were ready for whatever came next. Together, the morning of the wedding dawned soft and golden, the gentle breeze rolling in from the Pacific. Isabella stood in front of the bistro's big bay window, looking out at the simple garden they'd chosen for the ceremony. Rows of white chairs lined the freshly trimmed grass. Strings of soft lights crisscrossed overhead, wildflowers. Her mother's favorite framed the small wooden arch where she and Daniel would say their vows. It wasn't grand. It wasn't lavish. But it was perfect. Jacob appeared at her side, adjusting the cuff of his suit. You look like you're about to bolt, she laughed nervously. Is it that obvious? Psst, he smiled. Only to someone who's known you since you wore pigtails and made mud pies behind the bistro. She took a deep breath. It's not cold feet, it's just ... overwhelming. After everything, after all the battles, we're finally here. Nodded, and you're exactly where you're supposed to be. Outside, the small gathering of family and close friends was settling in. No reporters, no paparazzi, no strangers, just the people who mattered. When the music began, Isabella felt her heart race. She clutched the small bouquet in her hands, stepped out into the garden. Every eye turned toward her, but she only saw one Daniel. He stood beneath the arch, looking breathtakingly handsome in a tailored navy suit, but his expression was what stole her breath, the same look he'd given her that day in the coffee shop. It's the day he'd first asked for a conversation. .com. Steady, unwavering, as she walked down the aisle. Every moment of their journey played in her mind. The wrong hug, the late-night coffees, the arguments and reconciliations, the rebuilding of the bistro, the battles against public scrutiny, the moments when they could have given up but didn't. When she reached him, Daniel took her hands gently. You made it, he whispered, voice warm with emotion. I made it, she echoed, smiling. The officiant spoke, but Isabella barely heard the words. Her world had narrowed to Daniel's eyes, his hands holding hers. The future they were promising to build together. When it was time for their vows, Daniel went. First, I didn't just fall in love with you, Isabella. I found home with you. In every challenge, you stood tall. When the world doubted us, you never let me go. I promise I'll never let go of you. Tears blurred her vision as she spoke her vow. I thought I was strong alone. But with you, I've learned that real strength is standing together. I choose you today. Tomorrow. Always. The rings were exchanged, and when they kissed, the world faded. There were no cameras, no headlines. Just two people who had chosen love, against all odds. As the applause rose from their friends and family, Isabella leaned close and whispered, So, think you're ready for forever? Daniel grinned. I've been ready since the airport. And in that moment, surrounded by love and laughter, they knew this wasn't an ending. It was a beautiful beginning.